As soon as a human gets bitten by the sheep, they turn into terrifying zombies. How did a docile little lamb turn into a monstrous creature? It's all because of the farm owner, Stephen. In order to make the sheep's meat more succulent and reduce costs, he resorted to inhumane genetic experiments on the sheep. While some people condemn Stephen for his unethical actions, most of the public remain oblivious to the truth. To expose Stephen's twisted experiments, two journalists, Louise and John, sneak into the farm to gather evidence. But as soon as they enter the backyard, they witness the researchers handling the specimens. Seizing the opportunity while the researchers are busy with their cargo, John boldly snatches a jar containing one of the experimental subjects. Before the staff can react, John and Louise have already escaped into the nearby woods. However, their momentary relief is short-lived, as the researchers quickly close in on their location. In a desperate situation, the two are forced to continue their escape. John's sudden action catches Louise off guard. Fortunately, the researchers are all focused on chasing after John, leaving Louise momentarily safe. John frantically flees through the forest, but in the next moment, he trips over a tree branch, sending the jar containing the specimen crashing to the ground and shattering into pieces. To his surprise, he finds that the specimen has vanished without a trace. As he searches around in confusion, he fails to realize that a mutated lamb has crawled onto his back and viciously sunk its teeth into his ear. The sound of his agonizing screams echoes through the forest, resembling the screams of a slaughtered pig. A man fought through the excruciating pain trying to rip his ear off the zombie goat's mouth, but that little lamb just won't let go. No matter what, he starts slamming himself into trees, hoping to dislodge the lamb. Then he grabs a nearby stick and relentlessly beats the lamb with it. Eventually, out of desperation, he has no choice but to cruelly rip off half of his own ear to get rid of the lamb. John angrily throws the lamb on the ground, thinking it would be killed by the fall. But damn, that mutant lamb has some serious resilience. Before long, the mutated lamb finds itself in a vast pasture filled with grazing sheep, disrupting the harmony with its eerie cry. A sheep nearby, munching on grass, hears the cry and rushes over. As soon as the sheep gets close, the lamb opens its bloody mouth and bites down on the sheep. Now, the injured sheep is lying in the middle of the road. A man driving by immediately stops to check it out. Carl notices a bite mark on the sheep's nose, but doesn't think much of it. He asks another man to help him lift the sheep and take it back home. However, the man seems panicked when he sees the sheep. Turns out, he's Henry, the younger brother of the farm owner Stephen, and he's had a fear of sheep since childhood. Seeing Henry unable to assist, Carl decides to load the sheep onto the car by himself. But just then, Louise, who got separated from John, appears behind them. Assuming they are researchers, Louise demands that they hand over the sheep. After John and Carl explain the situation, Louise realizes her mistake and that they have no knowledge of Stephen's genetic experiments. Louise earnestly asks for their help in finding John, but just as they are about to set off, they see thick smoke billowing from a nearby house. Worried for the owner's safety, the three decide to check it out first. On the other side, in the forest, John is sitting on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. His grimacing face seems like he's about to undergo a mutation. Suddenly, he catches a whiff of a tantalizing scent. He turns and sees an adorable bunny. John swiftly scoops up the bunny in his arms. The three of them entered the smoky house, only to find it covered in eerie bloodstains. The homeowner was nowhere to be found, and as they anxiously searched, the escaped sheep suddenly appeared in the room. Clearly, it had fully transformed into a zombie sheep. Before the three could react, the zombie sheep lunged at them. Crazed, they could only take refuge in a room behind them. But inside, they discovered the gruesome death of the homeowner. Meanwhile, the zombie sheep outside continued to relentlessly pound on the door. Seeing that the deranged sheep was about to break in, Crowell aimed his gun and sent it to heaven. Things were getting eerie, and the three just wanted to leave as soon as possible. But as Louise reached the door, she witnessed a horrifying scene. They had no idea if these sheep were infected, so they cautiously made their way to the car. However, Henry, who had a fear of sheep, dared not step out of the house. Louise noticed Henry's fear and started to provide him with psychological support. She explained how gentle sheep are and how delicious they taste when grilled. Guided by Louise, they finally made it back to the car, but before Crowell could close the door, a sheep suddenly barged into the driver's seat. Ignoring it, Crowell stepped on the gas and left with the sheep. However, not long after driving away, the sheep inside the car underwent a dramatic transformation, turning into a terrifying zombie sheep. Crowell and the sheep fought fiercely in the driver's seat, despite Crowell's desperate resistance. In the end, he was bitten on the right leg by the sheep. With one kick, he managed to push the zombie sheep away, and then took the opportunity to climb into the back of the car. But what they didn't expect was, the zombie sheep in front of them could actually drive. There was a cliff ahead, but luckily, Crowell acted swiftly. He leaped off the car with the two of them and their dog. stranded without any means of transportation. They had no choice but to continue on foot, but just as they had barely begun walking, Crowell felt a sharp pain in his foot. He took off his shoe and was shocked to see that his foot had transformed into a sheep's hoof. This left the three of them in disbelief. Before Henry could even react, he saw hundreds of zombie sheep charging towards them from the hillside. Fortunately, Stephen's genetic laboratory was nearby. They managed to seek shelter inside before the herd caught up with them. Escaping the pursuit of the sheep, inside the lab, they encountered Stephen and two researchers. Upon learning that Crowell had been bitten, the female researcher took advantage of his unawareness and injected him with a tranquilizer. Stephen seized the opportunity to snatch the hunting rifle from Crowell's hand, forcing Henry and Louise out of the lab. But as soon as they stepped outside, hundreds of zombie sheep once again surged towards them. Helpless, they had no choice but to take cover near a fenced pit. However, as the zombie sheep continued to howl, Henry became overwhelmed with fear. In a moment of carelessness, he accidentally slipped into the pit, and Louise, in an attempt to save him, fell in as well. With the two of them taken care of, there was no one left to stop Stephen's experiment. He began preparations for the long-awaited sheep auction, unaware that a battle between humans and sheep was about to unfold. This is a film that combines sheep and zombie viruses for the first time. It takes place in a gene lab, where a female researcher is conducting experiments on Crowell. After injecting a dose of serum into Crowell's body, he undergoes a rapid transformation and miraculously turns back into a human. It seems that the drug they developed is highly effective. Excitedly, the researcher grabs the serum and prepares to find Stephen. However, as soon as she steps outside, she discovers her colleague who has been bitten to death by zombie sheep. With the zombie sheep closing in on her, she quickly escapes into the nearby woods. Unfortunately, in her panic, she gets stuck in a muddy swamp, and the zombie sheep catch up to her. She meets her demise at the hands of the zombie sheep. Meanwhile, on the other side, Stephen is still conducting his sheep auction. The genetically modified sheep have gained popularity among wealthy businessmen. However, as the sheep emit eerie and unsettling cries, hundreds of zombie sheep suddenly appear and start to rampage. The businessmen are terrified by this sight, realizing there is no escape. Wherever the zombie sheep go, death follows, and within minutes, all the businessmen become a feast for the zombie sheep. Henry and Louise witness this horrifying scene, but are powerless to stop the zombie sheep from enjoying their meal. In a strange turn of events, one zombie sheep stands in front of Stephen but doesn't attack him. When Stephen looks down, he realizes that his hand has inexplicably turned into a sheep's hoof. It turns out that on his way to the farm, he encountered John, who had been bitten by a lamb. Despite retaining some human consciousness, John resented Stephen's genetic experiments and bit his right hand in anger. Stephen now understands that he has been infected with the virus and desperately wants to find a cure. Meanwhile, Louise and Henry are still standing there, unsure of what to do. Fortunately, the farm's caretaker arrives in a car, and they quickly leave the scene with him. They are taken to the farm's villa where they spend the night. However, the danger is far from over as a large number of sheep soon surround the villa. With the three of them at a loss for what to do, Louise notices Stephen leaving the villa with the genetically modified sheep. Henry quickly realizes that Stephen is likely planning to escape in a private plane, which could potentially spread the virus to the outside world. The three of them must take action. However, at that moment, Henry discovers a bite mark on his arm that he hadn't noticed before. It seems that during his fight with the monsters earlier, he was accidentally bitten. With the situation growing dire, the caretaker and Louise drive away to attract the attention of the sheep while Henry, disguised in a sheepskin, cautiously follows Stephen's direction. A guy disguised in sheepskin crawls towards the zombie sheep herd. The nearby zombie sheep don't notice Henry at first, but soon he notices a ram wriggling behind him. Unable to bear it, Henry delivers a fatal blow to the ram. He thought this would alert the other zombie sheep, but to his surprise, they pay no attention to Henry. It dawns on him that he has also been bitten. These zombie sheep see him as one of their own. Meanwhile, Stephen has reached the private plane and starts the propeller. He plans to carry the breeding sheep on board, but suddenly, his body undergoes a drastic transformation. By the time Henry arrives, Stephen has turned into a terrifying monster with a sheep's head and human body. In a frenzy, Stephen attacks Henry. Despite Henry's desperate resistance, he is no match for Stephen. Just as Henry is about to meet his demise, a sheepdog suddenly runs towards them and starts barking at the sheepman, effectively subduing him. By this time, the plane's propeller has started and is slowly approaching Stephen. The dog immediately runs away, unaware of the situation. Stephen is torn apart by the plane on the spot. After the crisis is averted, Crowell arrives from the laboratory with the antidote. He directly forces the antidote into Henry's mouth. After a violent convulsion, the virus inside Henry's body is killed. But how to deal with so many mutated zombie sheep? The medication is simply not enough for their use. Henry sees the zombie sheep continuously releasing gas and has a brilliant idea. He lights up his lighter and throws it towards the herd.
Get up behind!
In Indeed, roasting the whole sheep is the fate of these woolly creatures. In the final scene, Crowl uses the remaining antidote to successfully save those who may have been bitten. It seems that the mad sheep virus has been eradicated, but what they don't know is that under the big tree, the sound of the sheepdog's bark seems a bit off.